Credit Unions Unite Against Racism Friday conversation, celebrating Juneteenth, honoring freedom and heritage. We're glad you're here. Now, without further ado, please help me welcome AACUC Chairman and Valera Vice President of Member Experience, Mr. Marvin York.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It is an honor to join you today as we gather for this powerful program, celebrating Juneteenth, honoring freedom and heritage. Juneteenth is more than a date on the calendar. It is a living testament to resilience, liberation, and ongoing pursuit of equity and equality. It is a reminder that freedom, once delayed, must never be denied again. And it is a call for each of us to continue to work of uplifting our communities, expanding access, and ensuring that progress is shared by all. Today's session is intentionally personal. You will hear reflections from family stories, lived experiences from leaders across the credit union movement, individuals who carry the legacy of Juneteenth, not only in their history, but in their purpose. These voices remind us that this holiday is not about the past. It is about how we show up today, how we lead, and how we build a future rooted in freedom, dignity, and opportunity. We are grateful for our moderator, Dr. James Poe, and our distinguished panelists, Ashley Beach Reed, Kelly Plant, and Cedric Vincent, for sharing their hearts and their heritage with us. Thank you for being here and leaning into the movement and honoring the spirit of Juneteenth with your presence. Dr. Poe, take the wheel.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to AACUC and Renee in particular for selecting me as your moderator today as we recognize and reflect on Juneteenth. I also want to acknowledge my mother, who is somewhere in the virtual audience today. Hi, Mom, wherever you may be. It's a privilege to be with all of you today. For many people, Juneteenth is viewed as a historical event, and it is. It marks June 19th, 1865, when news of emancipation finally reached enslaved people in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after freedom had already been declared. But Juneteenth is also a leadership story. It's a reminder that there can be a gap between what is proclaimed and what is experienced, a gap between intention and reality, a gap between policy and practice. And if we're honest, leaders still navigate those same gaps today. The details may change, but every generation faces moments that create tension, uncertainty, and distraction. Sometimes those moments happen nationally, sometimes they happen locally. Sometimes they walk through your front door of your organization in the form of conversations our teams are already having before we arrive at work. As leaders, our responsibility is not to control every event around us. Our responsibility is to help people stay connected to purpose, connected to one another, and connected to the mission we're all called to serve. That's one of the reasons I believe this conversation is so important for credit unions. The credit union movement has always been about expanding access, creating opportunity, and strengthening communities. In many ways, those values sit at the heart of why we're here today. And rather than simply hearing from me, I'd like us to hear from the individuals who have joined us for this conversation. I've asked each of our panelists to begin by introducing themselves through the lens of Juneteenth, not simply who they may be professionally, but what Juneteenth may mean to them personally, as leaders, and as members of the communities they serve. So let's start there. Kimberly, when you think about Juneteenth, what does it mean to you? And how has it shaped how you think, how you lead, how you serve?
Thank you for that, James. Greetings, everyone. I am Kimberly London Plant. I have expertise in financial services, project management, and insurance sales and servicing. I am driven by community empowerment. That's what it means to me. Social justice, as well as activism. I don't just work, I serve. So our industry motto, people helping people ethos, when I think about that, it is vital to transforming lives and creating opportunities, especially as we navigate those societal challenges. I am honored to have been chosen to contribute to thought leadership and this contemplation as we explore life after that Emancipation Proclamation, arguably one of the most transformative workforce resets in history. Happy Juneteenth.
Thank you, Kimberly. Ashley, how does it land with you? How do you see yourself through that lens of Juneteenth?
Thanks for asking. Hello, everyone. Ashley Beach Reed. So I am a credit union industry leader, a consultant, an advocate for developing the next generation of leaders in our industry, and AACUC's Future Fund Program Director. Hey. For me, Juneteenth is both a celebration and a call to action. When I think about Juneteenth, I think about the difference between freedom being declared and then freedom being fully realized. So it reminds me or reminds us that it may exist on paper, but it does nothing if no one is aware of it, is educated in that, and is accessible to them. So that is what I think about when I think of Juneteenth. For me, growing up, I did not celebrate it. It was not an annual holiday that we took part in. I actually just started celebrating Juneteenth a little over a decade ago. So I feel like I'm still a newbie to this amazing holiday.
Yeah, Ashley, and I appreciate that introduction to the kind of vulnerability that I'm sure we'll all be able to reflect on, and also serve as your role model, or role model that for us. Thanks for role modeling that for us. Cedric, what are your thoughts when you think about how you exist in the context of Juneteenth?
Absolutely. Thank you again for this opportunity. I'm Cedric Brinson, also a credit union ambassador, credit union pioneer of young professionals. I stole that from Ashley because my heart is at the very center of development of our next generation of leaders. And one thing that resonates with me, I think this time last year, I professed that I wasn't as knowledgeable as I would have liked to have been about Juneteenth. So it hadn't been but a couple of years that I was totally engulfed in all the things that Juneteenth stood for. And everyone that knows me knows that I have an affinity for music. And I was engulfed about 3 years ago with the opportunity to perform at a Juneteenth celebration. And it was that celebration that kind of pulled the lens off, pulled the scales back of being enamored with all the things that were going on in the festivities. So again, with me, someone who loves music, I see Juneteenth not only as a celebration, but a soundtrack of resilience, a celebration of freedom and also a reminder of how music carries stories and struggles through faith and triumphs of Black Americans across the country. When you think about songs sang back in that time in the form of spirituals in the fields and jazz, and I'm from Mississippi, so gospel and blues is one of those components that really attribute to my knowledge. And so I'm looking forward to sharing this time with some awesome panelists and getting their viewpoints on the subject matter at hand. So thank you and glad to be here again.
You, Cedric. Ashley, I'm going to come back to you, as we sort of think about the journeys that we're all on, whether it be in leadership, community, and the credit union movement, that total journey. When you think about Juneteenth in the context of those things, leadership, community, and the credit union, what is the conversation that you hope this audience walks away having?
So one of the conversations that I hope we walk away with is the unfinished one, which is economic empowerment. I think that the credit union movement has been built on the idea of people can accomplish more together. So the conversation we have is not simply about like what barriers exist, but what responsibilities we have as leaders to remove them. I constantly share with people who, whether I'm coaching them or we're working through what does it look like to be a leader, it's not necessarily that you know how to do all of the things that your direct employees know how to do, but it's a matter of that you are there to remove the barriers. And so if at any point we're not identifying those things and as a leader thinking about how do we remove them in order for the good work to be done, then I think that that's where we fall short. So Juneteenth should inspire us to ask questions like, how are we creating access? How are we building ownership? How are we preparing our future leaders, right? So Cedric and I are on the same page as far as that's concerned. And those questions to me are relevant to today.
Robert, what about you? When you think about the minds that are listening to this conversation, what is it that you want them to walk away thinking about and the conversations you want them to engage in?
Yeah, in the context of leadership, I just want the question to be present and forefront. How do we ensure that freedom translates into opportunities to everyone? We are not making forward progress if we cannot, tackle those things that are right in front of us, which are opportunities that have not been tapped into. As leaders, our responsibility is not simply to just celebrate progress, but to ask where the barriers still exist and what role we play in removing them. I think those are signs of great leaders if they're asking those questions. So as a community, I feel like we should, be asking how do we create spaces for everyone to be seen, valued, and empowered to thrive. And so my hope is that we leave this conversation inspired well beyond awareness and more towards action.
Kimberly, what about you as the catalyst for some of the thoughts that may be germinating in people's minds? What do you want that catalyst mindset, that explosion in their thoughts to transform into?
And Cedric said it well. We have to be very intentional in the spaces that we're creating, making sure that everyone has access, has the information, they're not locked out. But then as we have created the spaces, now it's time for that strategy. That strategy begins and ends with those very same people that are behind the profitability, the processes, the products, and the policies. So when I think of all of that, and as leaders, to truly be great, we hear that word a lot, but to truly be great, everyone must value equity and inclusion, full stop. There are times that we need to conform despite the diversity present. Somebody has to make the final decision. But then there are also times where we have to inform because we got to be very careful about our impact versus our intent. So as leaders, we have to be mindful of that. And then lastly, there are those moments where we must absolutely be courageous and transform our minds and hearts to improve our conditions for ourselves, our members, our staff, and our communities.
Appreciate all three of those answers. And now I think I'd like to see if I can just sort of turn up the heat on each of us just a little bit and understanding that in every marketplace, there are constraints. In every marketplace, there are fires and pressures and stresses. And in today's marketplace, that's no different. There are things that are happening nationally, regionally, locally that are impacting us and pushing us one way or the other. And so if we assume that the environment is not going to materially change tomorrow or perhaps the next day, what is the mindset and the strategy leaders should adopt going forward? And I'm going to throw that to you, Cedric, first. What is the mindset that we as leaders should be in strategy we should be adopting, assuming there will not be massive, significant change in tomorrow or the next day?
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that question. If we assume that the environment is not going to change, I think the mindset of the leader has to shift from expectation to responsibility. There's going to be some ownership involved in, because great leaders understand that while we can't control our environment, we can control our responses to it. That means focusing on what we can influence, our culture, our people, our partnerships, the relationships that we build. If we're focused on, future forward initiatives, and in the context of community, our commitment to serving others, which is the credit union mantle that we sit on. In the context of Juneteenth, though, the story of progress has never been about waiting for perfect conditions. It's always been about community resilience and collective action for the face of imperfect circumstances. So we can't sit back and wait for conditions to be perfect before we take action. I think great leadership starts well before then.
Really, what do you think? Assuming there won't be a massive change, but current restraints, current stresses, current pressures, what's the mindset that you would want leaders to have in today's situations?
And foremost, steadying the mind would be the most important thing to begin with. And as we're making decisions, we need to make decisions that are inclusive. We need to make decisions that are scalable. We have to ask ourselves, just because we can do something, should we do something? Is this something sustainable? Who's burdened? Who benefits? And when we think about all things remaining the same, but we know change needs to happen, maybe we have to take the mantle and be that change that we want to see and feel. And to quote the late great Michael Jackson, that man or that woman in the mirror, we're powerful. Maybe you have to just take ownership and lead the way.
Taking ownership and leading the way, taking those first, second, maybe third steps, and you might be the only one out there for a little while, or may feel that way, you know? Ashley, what are your thoughts? Assuming some version of status quo, some version of the pressure and the stresses are going to remain the same, maybe even be worse tomorrow. What is the mindset that we as leaders should be engaging in now?
So one, I have to stop and acknowledge Michael Jackson, because in my house, because of this movie that has just come out that I took my sons to see, Michael Jackson remains on repeat. Every morning, my 8-year-old is working on his moonwalk. So it was just interesting that you brought that up, and it just immediately made me think of our morning routine. But when I think about it, there has been, as a recovering perfectionist, I'm still recovering. I'm working on it as an everyday, day by day, step by step. My thought is just do it messy. So let me take a step back and explain what that means. So Proverbs 14:4. This is a book that I go to quite often. It says, where there are no oxen, the manger is empty, but from the strength of an ox comes abundant harvest. So when you think of the idea of making sure that everything is perfect conditions in order for you to move, there will be no oxen. But you have to understand, if there are no oxen, right, then you do not have abundant harvest. So one of the things that I think that as we do things, and when I think of myself as a Black woman and all of the things that I go through, and I think of, if I'm making a decision, there is a component where I feel like I'm making a decision for my whole entire community. If I go and I have an action, I'm impacting my whole entire community. And in those spaces, sometimes that could cause me to pause and not take action and be slow to respond or to speak. And though those things are wise traits, we also know that we need, in order for this to work, we have to actually take a step. Like, God does not guide our standstill, He guides our steps. For me specifically, I'll speak for myself. And so that's how that works. I have to step in order to receive the guidance. So when I think about just historically, a lot of our leaders, even like within this industry alone, they didn't have ideal circumstances before they did something, before they moved forward. They did it anyway. I recently had the pleasure of hearing Stacey Abrams' mom speak and talked about becoming a pastor in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken, and thinking about a Black woman becoming a pastor in Mississippi in her time. What was it that was going through her mind? Because I could just imagine there's lots of barriers that are in place, but she determined it needed to be done. That was it. And that's why she did it. In very not ideal circumstances, just doing what needs to be done and focusing on the things that you do have control over. What do you have? So you can develop your talent. You can build relationships. You can strengthen your institutions. You can mentor others. You can create opportunities. So a lot of times, sometimes we have everything that could go wrong staring in our face. And if we continue to take that in, it can impact our output. So what we have to do is continue to look for the opportunities in which we can move forward and just take that step. So that's my thoughts on that.
Let me take a bit of a left-hand turn here and ask us to consider this question. There are times when you know that there's a step that needs to be taken. You need to make a decision. You need to jump off a cliff, whatever the analogy might be, but it's cloudy. The outcome is unclear, right? All you know is that I have to go that way, and I don't have all the resources. I don't have all the information. I may not have all the support. And so I'm going to ask each of us to reflect on when that happened to us, right? Just a quick thing on when that time happened for you, when you had to make a decision and it was cloud. It may not have gone all the way well. It may have gone just a little bit well, and you had to learn from that cloudy decision that you made. So let me ask Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind jumping off of that cliff, this cloudy cliff first. When was a time when you had to make a decision without all the information? How and why did you do that? How did it go? Kind of just give us a little humanity, if you don't mind.
Several things come to mind, but I'll start with just a extreme life shift where, as you said, I didn't have all of the answers. Doing nothing was not an option. I had to go forward. I didn't know what was around the corner, but doing nothing was not an option. So, like most, I went in my prayer closet and asked for my steps to be guided, asked for clear discernment, and began to move, as Ashley alluded to, step by baby step by baby step. But I also made sure that I had my village around me as well. And I sought wise counsel when I needed to and took correction if I was maybe veering off course. And so I had to be humble in that moment. I had to be courageous in that moment. And what I've learned is and I say this to many people often, and if I don't know who's all on the call, but they've probably heard me say this, it's hard to be the picture when you're the frame. So a lot of times you don't understand why or how or what and don't have all the answers. But one thing I have learned through the years, it all works out. Everything happens just the way it's supposed to, when it's supposed to. You will encounter the people you need to, and it'll be fine. It may not be what you thought it should be, but it'll be just what it needs to be.
What do you think? A moment when you had to make a decision in the midst of obscurity, cloudiness, foolishness, whatever may have been happening in this space. What do you have for us?
Oh, and I think you said Ashley, right? Okay.
I did.
Okay. So I was thinking about it because I was like, I have two distinct stories kind of in my head. One of just even my move from Maryland to the community that I was able to grow up professionally and things like that, and moving to South Carolina, which was a huge deal. I had no idea what was going to happen. But then I wanted to bring it home to my credit union folk who are especially leading small credit unions. I took a role and I was leading a small credit union. And though I had all of these years of experience at a large asset size credit union, one area which I had minimal was around cards. And as I started to go through the process of learning cards and how everything needed to be set up, because we had a credit card portfolio and I wanted to make sure we were doing everything right, fraud hit. And when I'm saying it hit hard, and it was automatic, kept going. And I had a board member who said, we need to send out notice to everyone about what's going on for this small group of cards that were impacted at the moment. And he was very adamant about it. And I was like, I'm responsible for this credit union. I'm responsible for the decisions that we need to make. And right now, this is what we're not going to do. And it put me in a very peculiar spot because I was saying no to my boss, right? As well as still trying to figure out what are all of the steps that I needed to take in this space to ensure that my members were not impacted any more than they already were. The credit union remained safe and sound, and actually determine what the issue was. And so I think about the fact that because, and it was one thing that Kim said was counsel, I immediately, thankfully enough, I have been surrounded by amazing credit union professionals who have years of experience. So it was easy enough for me to pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, I'm having this experience. These are the things that I'm thinking about. Give me some insight into anything else I need to consider. And as I was able to just make one phone call, which turned into them connecting me with someone else, we were able to stop what happened. It was not a fun conversation, the next board meeting, because it was a big deal, me saying no. But I think about that experience just knowing that because of what I had already experienced and the people that I was connected to, I still had the ability to make impact. Though I didn't have all of this background in a particular area, because of my positioning, because of my access, I was able to do more than sometimes someone else was. So that's to me one of the things that I think about in that space of ambiguity and how to embrace it versus kind of being like, well, I can't go in that direction. I have to give that to someone else.
Appreciate that, Ashley. The context is really important in some of these discussions, right? So you got to lay that out.
Mhm.
Cedric, when the clouds have been in your world, in your life, right, and the thunderstorms are brewing, but a decision has to be made, but the kids have to be fed, and everybody's pulling on your pant leg to get something done, right? How did that land in your life? What do you have for us?
Well, I've been thinking as I've been listening to everybody else's responses, and I'm gonna contribute this one to Pastor Ashley Beach because I couldn't wait to jot down Proverbs 14:4, and I'm gonna go take a look back at that. But I wanted to take a very vulnerable approach as this happened just a couple of weeks ago. I have a 17-year-old who has never been outside of Mississippi, who is going into his senior year, but has recently become very, very active in our church as working with our youth and our youth ministry. And our senior team came to me and they were like, Cedric, we want Braylon to go to Mexico on a missions trip and he'll get to evangelize and he'll get to do all these things. And I'm like, absolutely not. 17, he hadn't been out off of our street, let alone Mexico. But I started to think and I started to look back at his last couple of months and how enamored he has been in reading his word. Like I'll walk into his bedroom and he is in deep devotion. Like most parents, I can tell y'all, I don't know about y'all, but at 17, I was not in my word or remotely close to being where I probably needed to be. But to see that on him, I started to, see things a little bit different, started to open up. And this is where, we're talking leadership, but in this vein, this is not corporate. I had to be a leader in my own house and recognize the gifts that was in my own kid. And I just want to share the confirmation that came for that. I was on a flight home from a work trip a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm on 24E, back of the plane, and this guy sits right next to me and he says, man, you look familiar. He's like, oh, do I know you? I was like, I'm not sure. I don't think so. We started naming off, what you do. Where do you work? Where do you go to school? Where do you go to church? That type of thing. And he was like, man, I'm just trying to get home. My wife is about to head out on a mission trip to Mexico. And I said, you are kidding. I was like, I have been killing my brain on the thought of letting my kid go to this trip. He's going to be with your wife. And he said, if you're worried, please don't be. He says she sends real-time updates with the kids. She is like you're going to be there. And he was not kidding. So all that comes back to the leadership space for me. Sometimes you have to let your employees, your staff, your people shine when you have recognized the greatness that's within them. And so that was a confirmation. That man could have sat on 10C. How did he end up sitting right beside me? And I hope that's not just over the head of many of us, but for me, it was an opportunity to just trust, to sit back and trust. And a lot of times things will come out right if your intentions are pure and you are trying to develop the next version of leaders. So I'll stop there because
That's
the
great,
pastor
Cedric. Thank you
actually
so much
breaking
for
it
that.
out.
And I'll tie a connection to something that we're seeing in the consulting work we're doing with a variety of organizations time and time again, which is a group of professionals that need to be thrown in the deep end and just let them drown, just a little bit. They got to get some water in their throat, just a little bit, And so you can't when we try to create that protection around our children slash our mentees slash our colleagues, we are precluding them from developing the grit and resilience that comes from something new, that comes
Yeah.
from a little bit of failure, that comes from drowning just a little bit. That and for each of us, we've all had that moment when we didn't know if we were going to make it. And there
Yeah.
may have been somebody was watching from just around the corner to make sure that we was going to be all right enough, but to make sure that we drowned just enough to learn the lesson, just enough, right? So with that being said, as we look backwards over the last 10, 15 years, I want to ask us to be critical and accountable for what we may have done really well or not so much. So when you look back over the last 10, 15 years, what didn't we do well? And what's the honest critique of that we can name right now? And what can we do to credibly improve right now? Looking back over the last 10, 15 years, what didn't we do well? What's that honest critique? And how do we name it? And how can we credibly improve? And let me go to Kimberly. Let me toss that right in your lap and see what you have for us.
Catch that. But when I think about looking back and reflecting, oh my goodness, there's a lot of lessons that have been learned, a lot of shoulda, wouldas, and couldas. But I will stick to one. We, or should I say I'm not going to speak for everybody, didn't take my civic duty seriously enough. Had to really sit with that, because in this information age, there's no reason not to know enough to make an informed decision. No reason. I allowed ourselves and others that didn't have the same lived experience as we had to abuse their authority and control us and diminish the quality of life that the average person had to endure. This was through fear tactics and belittling comments and financial manipulation. Well, as a result, some of us voted and maybe even acted and voted against our own best interests, or we didn't do anything at all. We failed to truly examine, again, who is burdened and who benefits from all these decisions that are made by people in charge. So if I had to name one thing, and I could name a few, we didn't take our civic duty as well as we should have, because that has manifested itself in so many ways on the national level, the state level, the city level, parish level, or counties for y'all don't have parishes. But I would have to go there.
That's heavy, Kimberly. You know, I'm just gonna let it marinate in the space for a minute. Just let it hang out there. You know, did you take your civic duty seriously as you look in the rearview mirror? Right? Did you get out there? Did you help people to do what they needed to do, whether it was driving somebody somewhere or explaining something that was a bit complex to somebody that didn't have the capacity to really understand it in that moment? Did you take your duty seriously? Ashley, what do you have for us?
Well, one, to add to what you said, James, is also, did you let your employees go early? Did you let them come in late? Like, when you think about what that looks like, even as a leader, what can we do in that space? And the thing that I had thought about here, I was like, man, I'm definitely potentially going to ruffle some feathers, especially in this particular community. Because I was thinking, I'm like, what is one of the things that sticks out for me? And I was like, you know what? We focused more on representation than sustainability. So representation matters. I have said this quite often, that I'm not sure that I would have applied for the executive role position that I applied for and interviewed for and took that, had I not stepped foot in Raleigh, North Carolina at my first AACUC conference in 2017. Period. Being first matters. And we're still having first in 2026. Opening doors matter. It is so important that where we have the opportunity to move out the way and create space for someone else, that we're called to do that. And in those spaces, if you do that, and it's not then, and that thing cannot surpass you, it stops at you, have you done enough? Right? So now I think about a matter of we create this amazing platform, but we don't tell anyone else how to keep it going. We don't ensure that the foundation is solid enough that it can be built off of, and not just the first level, but it can handle 2 and 3 and 4. So I think that would be something we have the opportunity to really address now going forward, is ensuring that whatever we're putting in place, right? This idea of what I just said, do it messy, do it, period. Just don't wait all the time and say you have to wait till it's perfect. And at the same time, asking that question, is what I'm setting up today for for my future or for someone else's future, is it sustainable? And if it's not, what can I do to create it so that it can be? Who do I need to tell about the work that I've done? Share the history so that they have an idea of why the decisions were made. A lot of the times, especially for me, when I came into the credit union, into that particular space, there were a lot of questions that were unanswered that I didn't understand why we made certain decisions, why we had chosen the products and services or the relationships that we had chosen, even though when I looked at it, I was like, it didn't necessarily completely benefit our credit union or our members the way that I would have wanted it to. I didn't have any idea. And so when sometimes you don't have any background, it makes going forward more challenging because you're met with even more resistance. You can't even meet somebody where exactly they are. All of the people who have been there from the very beginning, you can't explain to them why it's so important we move in this direction because all they have the history, but you don't. You just seem like you're this person coming in to change everything that they've established.
Yeah.
So,
Now, Greg, what do you have? I mean, this
I-
idea that you look in the rearview mirror, what is that honest critique, clear-eyed view, looking backwards, and what can we do to improve?
Yeah, well, Ashley and Kimberly have done a great job of articulating that. I just want to add, though, in leadership, one of the hardest but most important things we can do is tell the truth about the gap between intentions and outcomes. Like, and I'm really appreciative of like organizations like AACUC because you want to talk about ruffling the feathers when you are passionate about something and you want to move forward with it, your mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. You got these ideas and these things that you want to contribute, but sometimes you feel like you're on an island and don't know who you have that's sitting adjacent to you that will support those initiatives and endeavors. You feel like you're by yourself. So, in terms of the credit union movement, the question isn't whether we care about people. Our mission has always been, rooted behind people helping people. The question is whether we've been bold enough to, evolve our practices at the same space, at the same pace as our initiatives and visualizations have come to the forefront. We're talking Juneteenth here from a Juneteenth perspective. Freedom is not just about declaration; it's about implementation, and it's about making sure that promises become realities. So I am appreciative for our allies who are starting to understand and learn some of the things that we have had to overcome to get in some of the spaces and some of the positions that we're holding. And then once we get there, we have to represent well in terms of how we show up and how we demonstrate the passion that is behind our initiatives and things like that. So that's a really good question. We got more work to do.
More work to do. And we have more questions too. And this next one is for you, Miss Ashley. Now that we've been having this conversation now for a little while now, this group of us for the last 40 minutes or so, and the group of us in preparation for this for a little bit longer, and your ideas have settled, what sparks out as the most urgent or perhaps most misunderstood component right now for leaders? What part of this conversation around Juneteenth and how it impacts our leadership, our fellowship, our service seems most urgent or misunderstood right now?
so one of the things that I think about that's maybe a misunderstanding, I was told like to stay still so that my thing doesn't move, and it's really hard. So I'm originally from New York and I talk with my hands. So I've been intentionally kind of trying to touch them, but it's hard. Okay. So one of the things that I think about is that equity and opportunity only benefit certain groups. So a misunderstanding that we have is surrounding this. So when we think about it and understanding having access to financial education, having affordable services, being able to own homes, having entrepreneurial support and leadership development, like that everyone benefits from those things. And so the urgent issue for me is economic mobility. I think that too many people are working hard but still struggle to build wealth and create financial stability. One of the things that I've had the pleasure of working with under the Future Fund is one of the pillars is wealth building and community impact. And so I've been a part of a lot of conversations that are happening and were conversations that I was having some decades ago, showing my age here, where we talked about whether it was like the simple aspect of budgeting, and we went through the process of saying, this is how much you need to save, this is how much you need to invest. And now our conversations are like, well, what is your relationship to money? Because we have been spending time, and this is one of the things that hit me like a ton of bricks, is that we have been spending time using the same formula, preaching the same formula to everyone of this is what you need in order to be financially set. This is what you need in order to be financially free. But the formula is not working for everyone. Why? If it's so successful, why is it that we have people who are still living paycheck to paycheck? Right? I mean, everybody here, you know, you've gone through some type of training, especially if you're in the credit union space, you've gone through some type of training, and you can look to your right and to your left of the people that you work with, and they're still in the same situation that you've been told. Now they have access to the information, right? What is the difference? So I think that we need to, like credit unions, we have an opportunity specifically to address that challenge and make it and it's attached to our mission, which is rooted in people helping people, to really take this piece seriously. What is it that we need to do to ensure that everyone understands? Number one, it's fantastic to own a home. You don't need to have a home and be poor. A lot of times, you know, we have where you're reaching out to have access, and when you do get your first home, you need it to be big and you need it to have all of these things. What does it look like to go through the process of true wealth building, and starting with how do you mentally associate with money? What impacts, what family environments, outside environments have impacted you in order for you to then move those things forward? So I think that we need to change our approach and not necessarily just saying, here, I'm going to give you this budget template and you're going to use this, and then you're going to save 10% and you're going to do such and such and it's going to work. But really talking about what does it look like for us to move those things forward by having some real and honest conversations.
That
I
you're
don't
so
want to
right,
start
actually.
preaching.
There's this massive gap. If I go back to something that Cedric, you said before, and I'm going to toss it to you here, that the truth between the gap between intention and outcome. We can talk a lot about wealth building and these kinds of things, but somebody at some point in time has to put shoulder to the wheel, right? And if that doesn't take place, then we remain in the same place having really interesting conversations about wealth building, you know, really interesting podcasts about these gaps that exist. So Cedric, what do you think what's hot on your mind now that we've been having these conversations for a while? What needs to
Yeah.
be thrown out to the audience from you?
Yeah. Well, another misconception that I've been thinking about here lately is that progress happens naturally over time. You know, history has always shown us that and reminds us that change often requires intentional action. Progress is very rarely automatic. It usually is the result of courageous leadership and deliberate decisions. And what we need to understand is the reality is that our communities are changing, member expectations are changing, our workforce demographics are changing. But it's going to be the leaders and institutions that really understand and trust their people are going to be the ones that thrive. The urgency is not about checking boxes. The urgency is about relevance, trust, and how we impact the communities that we serve. And lastly, you know, it's always been the heart and the cooperative movement that we do things for our communities and our people. And having an eyesight on real leadership is what is going to not be the solve for that, but will start the initiatives to solving the challenges in our communities.
Really, what's on your mind? What's heavy on your heart or hot in your mind?
Man, hearing both Ashley and Cedric and some of what they expounded upon really hit at the heart of the matter, as you say. And what I would add to that is, a lot of times, because when Ashley said, how did you get here? We've taught you all the things, and how are you still paycheck to paycheck? What's happening here? How did we get here? And then we have to be real. We have to keep in mind that proximity isn't necessarily permission. Just because you were near the space and near the thing that was it doesn't make you successful. You have to be intentional, to Cedric's point, and just be real, read the room. And what also came to mind was a lot of times you hear the saying, money is in the medicine, not the cure. So are we truly healing in the way that we think we are? Do we need to evaluate self and make sure that these products and services, the fee structures, the org charts, is all of that what it needs to be successful? Or are we sort of saying that we're trying to make things better, but we want to control what better looks like? I don't know. It just, my mind went so many places. And then, of course, to tack onto what you mentioned, James, social media today has shown us a lot of things. And then Cedric mentioned it well. It's shown everybody what has been going on now. Some people have talked about it and had to live it. Others didn't really know about it. They had to hear it, but now it's showing it to everyone. And now you're forced to decide. The urgent matter is, where do I really stand? Do I want to be on the right side of history? Am I doing my part to make it better for everyone? Or am I only doing my part to make it better for me and mine? It's urgent that we remember there's a greater good at hand, and it's more than just you and your little microcosm. There's a greater good. We are very interdependent on one another, and we have got to be better about that. And I think we've misunderstood, or we've lost the plot, as they say these days, and forgot about the fact that we need each other in some way, shape, or form, and we have to get back to that to be better.
I'm going to stay with you for a question that we have from the audience. It speaks to your comments around civic duty or civic responsibility. And the question is framed in this idea of how do we continue to inspire engagement, right, in civic duty when we're surrounded by, I'm paraphrasing here, when some folks are apathetic about the impact. Why should I do that when it doesn't matter? Why should I do that when they have all the control and all the power anyway? It's not going to make that much of a difference. So what words of motivation, beginning with you, Kimberly, do you have for those of us that may be feeling a little down right now, feeling a little put at or put on? When you flip on the news and you see we lost again, you see we're being held back again, you see they took something else from us. And that becomes the conversation as opposed to the motivational words that the three of you all are about to share with us right now.
Well, I'm one of those. I would have to say, Team 92% from a while back there, defeated, man, felt completely defeated, did all the right things, did all the studies, made the right, defeated. But when I think about all of that, the thing I would say is, okay, it is what it is, but you have to be a part of this process, because if it wasn't important, they wouldn't work so hard to take it away from you. And that's what keeps me going. There's got to be something to it, because that's always where the focus is, and all of the decisions are how can we pull away, strip away. And so as we're out doing our civic duty, we also make some assumptions. And I tell some of the organizations I'm a part of, let's be mindful that everybody isn't on the same educational level. So when we say, oh, they need to get out and they need to vote and they need to do these things and this is why, okay, but you might be speaking a foreign language for a person who is not civically minded, or they didn't have the background to all of that. And so you're just telling them, you need to show up, and you need to be out there, and you need to go vote. Okay, I'm there now. What do? I didn't even register. All the things. And so we make some assumptions and forget that we have to do more than just give the directive, but we have to educate on what to do with the directives that we're given.
What do you have for us?
Ooh, I heard the voices of my grandparents, Florice and Halbert Brinson, just come into the discussion. Because I have been one of those who said, man, this just don't matter. It's just, it's not serving its purpose. But then I look at the passionate ones who are vigilant and who are very diligent with their actions of creating change, and it quickly turns into not wanting to let my brother down, my sister down, my grandparents down, who fought extremely hard for the opportunities that we get. So it's a feeling of exhaustion, but then when you look at the change that has happened and what we're actually fighting for, it rejuvenates us, me, very quickly. So I'm fighting for the person sitting next to me. We get down in our spirits quite often on a ton of things, but when you consider others, which is what we're asking everyone on the call to do when times get hard, consider the outcomes, consider what you're striving for. And there's someone next to you that is very passionate about the initiative, and you joining them. This is about community. This is about joining hands. And where it may sound all kumbaya, it makes a difference when you're unified and you have a voice of unity and togetherness. So that's my take on it.
So take us home on this question.
So my statement is self-preservation does not create community.
Yeah.
And as much as I think that it is important to take care of yourself, when I think about that soft life that my girlfriend and I joke about, like laying in the tub and sipping champagne, that was not when the term was brought up, that wasn't the thought behind it. It was in order for you to enrich yourself. You're going to pour into the areas that matter most, and that includes your community. That doesn't mean take off your foot and, feed it to someone else or anything like that, where you are not left able to stand, right? But in your self-preservation, in you taking care of yourself, there needs to be an aspect where community is created. So however it is that we move forward, we have to understand that if you take a stance of I am going to self-preserve, you're going to preserve yourself and you will be alone.
Well said.
We are quickly coming up on the top of the hour, and I want to give each of you all an opportunity to talk a little bit about something that we may not have touched on, and that you want to make sure that the audience leaves with some pricking around it, or something you want to reinforce that has been discussed, but you want to make sure you hammer that nail all the way in. And so you got 90 seconds to make a fantastic impression and leave people, jumping up and down in their seats. So we are going to go in reverse alphabetical order, which means, Cedric, you're up.
Oh boy, should have known that you would throw a spin on there.
The newly elevated Cedric Benson with the newly promoted Cedric Benson. Somebody needs to clap for that man. Go ahead and just put it in the chat. That man is doing great things over there in the great state of Mississippi. M-I crooked letter, I crooked letter, I-P-P-I.
Come on now, that's another hour we need now. Come on. If we leave this conversation without discussing accountability, then I believe we have missed our mark. Where we want to make change collectively, it's going to start with the individual first, and having the mindset to create change, and not through words, through action. Because progress is not measured by our intentions, like we said earlier. It is measured by our outcomes. It is measured by who has access, who feels like they belong, who feels like they're growing, and who is benefiting from the opportunities that have been created. So the challenge before us now is not, not whether we know what matters. The challenge is whether we are willing to align our actions with our values consistently and courageously.
Sir, thank you for that. Kimberly, 90 seconds. What do you have?
Seconds. All right, what I got. Basically, what are we asking for? All we're asking for is a fair shot. Don't lock us out. Don't lower the bars on expectations. Hold us accountable, but be fair. I want you to vote, take part in that political system, advocate for yourselves and your communities, invest in your future and that of your family, your friends, and your neighbors. Governance should be by the people, of the people, for the people, but you must elect, recruit, and empower the right people.
Well said. Ashley, 90 seconds of power and sunshine, if you would.
We must talk about legacy. Your personal success is not your legacy. It is what you build that outlasts you is your legacy. So are you developing future leaders? Are you creating opportunities for young people to see themselves in leadership roles? Are you strengthening institutions? Are you helping families to build wealth? If we leave without discussing legacy, the succession within organizations, I know credit unions, that's a big deal, and then long-term economic empowerment, then we've missed an opportunity to move our conversation forward.
So before we leave here, I want to ask each of us to do some homework, but do it now. And that homework is, what are you going to do in the next 30 days or less as a result of or empowered by this conversation or conversations like these? What are you going to do in the next 30 days or less that has been empowered by this conversation or conversations like these? Now, the homework that we're doing right now is also going to have a flavor of accountability, because I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat. I'm going to ask you to put into the chat that within the next 30 days, I'm going to fill in the blank, right? And while you're typing that in, I'm just going to remind us of some of the quotes from our panelists. So don't let me distract you from all the typing you need to do right now. I'm just gonna wait for you to place your hands on the keyboard. I'm gonna wait patiently for you to place your hands where they belong. There we go. Here we go. Here we go. So just some thoughts. If it wasn't so important, they wouldn't be trying to take it away. Proximity is not permission. Progress does not happen naturally or automatically over time. Tell the truth about the gap between intention and outcome. It's hard to be the picture when you're the frame. The story has never been about waiting for perfection. Do it messy. When there is no oxen, the manger remains empty. Just pause on it. Just do a head thing on it one time there. Expectation, move from expectation to responsibility. Steady the mind. Make decisions that are scalable. Doing nothing is not an option. Type faster, type faster. We got 2 minutes left. Seek counsel and take direction. Are you taking your civic duty seriously? We focus more in the past, perhaps on representation versus sustainability. I'm fighting for the person next to me. Self-preservation does not create community. And your personal success is not your legacy. This has been 58 minutes of education, 58 minutes of motivation, 58 minutes of inspiration, 58 minutes of stickiness between people that need to be sticky to one another. There is no way we make it there, wherever there is, alone. We only make it together. And those of us that have the ability, the capacity, the desire, the talent to be excellent, it is your responsibility to reach to somebody who's not quite all the way there yet and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, James, I need you to do better at this. I need you to be stronger at this. And let me help you do it. It is not enough to say, look at you not doing it well, young person. Look at you not doing it well, older person. Look at you not doing it well, a person in a big credit union or a small credit union. It is us. It is us that has to make it. And the only way that we make it is together. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy days. Everybody's very busy these days, but you carved out this time for something you thought was important, right? And thank you so much for the information or the commitments that you put into the chat. When we do that and it shows up and we see other people doing it, can be motivating for us. So if you didn't get a chance to write something in, remember the accountability is on you. And if there's somebody that you can call right now that you know coulda, woulda, shoulda been on the call, and you can share with them. This is what we talked about, and here's the commitment I made. Here's the commitment I made. Some people might call that leadership. Some people may call that taking accountability. Somebody might. I would. Thank you all so much for your time. I surely appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the conference, doing what you need to do, wearing what you need to wear, having a great time, getting educated, getting developed, and being sticky to one another. Y'all have a good rest of your day, and happy Juneteenth.